And I think as you do get older, you learn to deal with things a little bit different. You learn to just take it in your stride. Your skin is thicker, your shoulders broader. Don't get me wrong, it hurt like hell to miss out, and I was pretty upset. But you do move forward, I think.
Now, if you could go back and lead England once more as captain, what's the one thing that you would do differently?
Go for posts.
Do you want to answer that, or shall I? Yeah, look.
We're going to touch off that in a minute.
Bravo, I'm joking, mate.
It is true, and it is, no, in all seriousness, it is, unfortunately, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and do we go back to that decision, go for posts and give ourselves an opportunity to get through? Would we have got it? Who knows? But you potentially look at that opportunity and you try that. And yeah, I think that'd be the one thing that I always look back at my England career and definitely would try and change. Because you don't know these butterfly moments, and hopefully that would have a big effect on the game and the result of the World Cup, and who knows where we'd be now. But yeah, that was definitely a big decision, and I think that World Cup is, I've moved a long way since, but it is a scar I'll always wear. Whenever we speak about it, whenever people talk about it, it's always a tough time for me, a tough time for a lot of those players. I remember actually when we played Wales in the first game post Six Nations back at Twickenham, the first game, and as you can imagine, there was a huge amount of speculation about the game. Is it a revenge mission? What about the World Cup? And there was so much, but I don't know, you probably don't remember it because you were on the positive side of it. But we won the game, and only just won the game in the end. I think George North literally millimetre of a toe went out, and luckily we won it in the end. And we're doing a lap of honour, and I just broke down in tears. I just had to get in the change room. I just had to get back in, and I just couldn't control myself. And all these emotions came out of me, and so many of you guys came up to me and just said, look, we didn't realise how much it affected you and how much of the burden and toll it took on you. And me personally, I didn't share well enough. I was going to go through the motions as a club, put a huge match strain on, whether it's my wife, my friends, my family, teammates probably. And yeah, it was definitely a massively tough period for me.
See, from a colleague point of view, obviously I had massive empathy for that England side at the moment. Obviously, you're delighted you win it. Course, yeah. A little part of you is buzzing because you're not England at a home World Cup. But for every team that wins, another team loses. That's sport. And I wouldn't have known, when I reflect now, how much that probably affected you at Quins, because you put on a hell of a brave face. Like, obviously we shared lists every day. You were happy, you were bubbly and what have you. And I've read quite a lot of your stuff that you've come out recently and said that. So, huge respect for you to you for coming out and talking about it, because it's important. It's definitely important. And it probably ties back to what I spoke about earlier. It's often you have to go through those things in your life or in sport or whatever, and big losses to actually appreciate what winning takes. And as you said, you've mentioned that Wales-England game a year later. I can imagine the emotion, even winning that, or being the Six Nations, was pretty special.
Well, Chris, I just want to stay on that day for a second. So we're talking about that, the 26th of September, 2015. So Chris, can you take us through the emotions and memories that you have when you do look back on that day?
Yeah, look, it was, I think for me, the World Cup in particular, not just that day, but the World Cup for me was one of the highlights of my career. Leading England in the World Cup, that Fiji game, that kind of opening ceremony, going to Twickenham, the thousands and thousands of white shirts, the buzz going around, all that kind of stuff. It was what you dreamt about. And it was really the top of the mountain, the top of the peak, whatever you want to say. But then, yeah, that Wales game, the Australia game the following week, where we got beat pretty comfortably at the end, doing that press conference, probably 5 minutes after a final whistle of being knocked out of a home World Cup, with probably 200 reporters in the room and cameras and people taking pictures and all that kind of stuff, was the toughest thing probably I've ever had to do. And there was a huge kind of scale, and it's been the hardest period of my professional career, but also one of the top moments of my professional career as well. And I think with it, it's taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot about myself. It's taught me a lot about being there for other people who have been through the experience. And look, there's a number of things, and I've spoken about what kind of helped me get through certain situations and stuff like that in the past. And I think what it did teach me was the amount of people that reached out to me, because all my friends and family and all that kind of stuff were brilliant, but they didn't really understand what it was like, and they didn't really know. And I think the biggest thing that Sean Fitzpatrick reached out to me, and he said, look, nothing anyone could do or say at the moment is going to make me feel good. But the sun will come up again. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be next week. It might not even be next month. But it will come up again, and you will be okay. And I think, look, sometimes you've got to grieve, but then you need to kind of move forward, and it will be okay eventually. But it was the likes of like a Kevin Sinfield, a Delalio, a Alistair Cook, Dylan, like these type of international captains who had been there and done it before, who reached out to me. And it's now about using that experience and reaching out to other people who are going through that type of thing. Because unfortunately, you know what it's like to be now written about on the front and back of papers, and not in a nice way. And you do learn to take it with a pinch of salt and avoid it and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you can't avoid it. And I think for me now, if I see when it was similar to when England went down to Cardiff a couple of years ago, and they targeted Carl Sinclair, and Carl was a Quins teammate of mine. And for whatever reason, the media got on his back and went after him and made him the scapegoat. And it's just reaching out to people like that and just being there for them, because you have that understanding. And I'm sure, look, Jamie's been through incredible highs and lows as well. And I'm sure the people that have helped him the most are probably the people who have been through it as well.
I appreciate your honesty. And we'll move on. So I have a question about Stuart Lancaster. So obviously he's doing a brilliant job at Leinster. However, he had a very tough time from fans and the media as the England coach, especially in the Home World Cup. So can you tell me why things went so terribly wrong for him with England when he seems to be such a great coach?
Yeah, look, and as players, we have to take responsibility for that, myself included. And unfortunately, look, we weren't a bad time. We blinked at the wrong time. I think in that World Cup, whether it was pressure, whether it was little moments in big games go a long way. And unfortunately, we got them wrong. I got one wrong. Some other moments, and that's what it comes down to. And I think you look at the back of unfortunately, whenever big sports events don't go well, the head guy goes, the coaches go, lots of players go, and there is a massive transformation. But I'll always be incredibly grateful for Stuart for giving me the opportunity to making me a better player. And Stuart is a fantastic coach, and people are being reminded of it. I think they forgot about it. And actually, when I left Harlequins, I gave him a call, and we'd stayed in touch. We had swapped the odd message and odd phone call here and there, but we probably chatted for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, just about everything, about the last couple of years, about the World Cup. And it was great to properly reconnect rather than just the odd messages of well done when they've won stuff or vice versa. And it's great to see him doing so well. It's great to see people acknowledge that again, because it's tough. And unless you've been through that where people want your head, it's tough to see and appreciate what it is really like. And I think looking at what people say, and someone actually messaged me the other day, and I guarantee you, no one feels worse than the players, the coaches, whatever you're going to say to them. That's about you. That's about you getting your aggression out, you getting your thing out. For them, they feel bad enough. Like, honestly, I saw the stuff that went on to Liam Williams and the kind of abuse he got. And someone actually messaged me the other day and said, and apologised for a smirk and snarky remark they gave to me back in 2015 after the World Cup. And they didn't realise the effect it has on players, that the little things that you say can go a long, long way to really affecting people. And I only think now, and I know there's been a lot of talk about mental health and stuff like that, and I only really think now we're starting to really embrace that in the rugby, really get behind it and open. And there is a lot out there, but it's down to the individuals. And that's when I look back at myself, and there was stuff there, but I probably wasn't brave enough to go down that route and really explore it like I should have done. So I think when people are out there and they're trolling people, or they're giving someone sly remarks about not going well, trust me, that player feels worse and that coach feels worse, and anything you can ever say, but it will have a lasting impression for sure.